What if I told you that the most powerful pharmacy in the world isn't in some high-tech lab, but it's actually right between your ears? Today, we're going to dive deep into the placebo effect. And we're not talking about it as some kind of trick, but as a genuine medical mystery that's forcing us to rethink, well, pretty much everything we thought we knew about healing.
So let's just cut right to the chase. Can your mind actually heal your body? It sounds a little out there, right? Almost like science fiction. But as you're about to see, the connection between what you believe and your actual biology is way more powerful and way more real than you might think. All right, so where did this whole modern obsession with the placebo effect even come from? Well, to find out, we have to go back in time to just after World War II and look at one groundbreaking paper that dragged this whole phenomenon out of the shadows and right into the scientific spotlight. Okay, full disclosure, by today's super strict standards, Beecher's paper was, well, it was a little bit messy. But here's the thing, it didn't matter. He'd pulled together so much evidence showing that patients given a simple sugar pill were consistently reporting real relief. And that forced the medical world to stop shrugging this off and finally ask, wait a minute, what is actually going on here? And that one question, what's going on, led scientists down two main paths. Is this all just about your beliefs, your expectations? Or is it something deeper, a kind of automatic response that our bodies learn without us even knowing it? Well, as it turns out, the answer is, yeah, it's a bit of both. So let's unpack these two ideas. On one hand, you've got what's called response expectation. That's the conscious part. It's you thinking something's going to work. Your doctor says this pill will help, you believe them, and that expectation alone kicks things off. But then there's the other side, classical conditioning. This is totally unconscious. It's your body learning to connect the ritual of getting treated with the result of feeling better. Honestly, the easiest way to think about this is like Pavlov's dogs, but for medicine. The first few times you take a real painkiller, your body gets real relief. If you do that enough, your body starts to associate the whole routine, opening the bottle, taking the pill, the glass of water, with that feeling of relief. After a while, the routine itself is enough to trigger that response, even if the pill is a total fake. It's like a learned biological reflex. And this is where it gets really wild. This conditioning is so powerful that it can work even when you're not consciously aware of it. I'm talking about studies where researchers flash a cue on a screen so fast you don't even register seeing it, and it can still trigger a placebo response. Your body can be trained to react even when your conscious mind is completely out of the loop. Okay, so we've got these two powerful psychological triggers, right? Expectation and conditioning. But what are they actually triggering in the body? This is where things get really interesting, where we shift from psychology to straight-up biology. Because the placebo effect isn't an illusion. Your mind might be the key, but your body is the pharmacy. In other words, it's not really about the fake pill itself. It's about everything around it. The context is what matters. The doctor's white coat, the sterile smell of the office, the reassuring words. All of those things are cues that send a signal to your brain, basically telling it to start firing up its own internal drug-making factory. And man, what a factory it is. When you get a placebo effect, your brain is releasing some serious heavy hitters. We're talking endogenous opioids. That's your body's personal, all-natural version of morphine. We're talking dopamine, that feel-good chemical that's all about reward and motivation. Not to mention things like endocannabinoids and serotonin. These are real, powerful chemicals manufactured right inside you. So let's be absolutely crystal clear on this point. The placebo effect is not just in your head. The trigger might be psychological, yeah, but the response is 100% biological. Scientists can literally watch it happen on brain scans. They can measure these chemicals in your body. It is a real, physical, measurable event, period. So if this is a real biological thing, it leads to a fascinating question, doesn't it? Are some of us just naturally better at this than others? Are some people genetically wired to be strong placebo responders? Well, scientists are now looking for the answer exactly where you'd expect, in our DNA. And they've even given this idea a name, the placebome. It's basically the whole collection of genes that might control how you, as an individual, respond to a placebo. The thinking is that your ability to have a placebo response could be a stable inherited trait, just like the color of your eyes. And they're already zeroing in on the prime suspects. Of course, they're looking at the genes that control all those powerful chemical pathways we just talked about, dopamine, opioids, serotonin. Little variations in these genes might be the very reason why the exact same sugar pill can have a massive effect on me and almost no effect on you.
Just to show you how specific this gets, let's zoom in on one powerful example. It's probably the most studied gene in the placebome right now. It's called COMT, and its job is to help manage dopamine in the brain. And it turns out one tiny, tiny little change in this gene can have a huge impact.
It's actually pretty wild how clear the difference is. See, people with one version of this gene, called MET/MET, naturally have higher levels of dopamine hanging around. And in a big study on IBS, these were the people who showed the strongest placebo response. But folks with the other version, the VAL/VAL one, have lower dopamine levels and, you guessed it, a much weaker response. That's a direct, measurable line from your genes to the placebo effect. So let's just take a second to let that sink in. If our own DNA can help predict how we'll respond to a placebo, that changes everything. This has massive implications for how we test new drugs, how doctors treat patients, even how we think about the entire doctor-patient relationship. Just think about clinical trials. Their whole purpose is to prove a new drug works better than a placebo. But what if your placebo group, just by random chance, is full of these genetic super responders? Your billion-dollar wonder drug could end up looking like a total dud, not because it doesn't work, but because the placebo just worked too well. And this gets at a really big challenge. A lot of researchers are now saying that the classic two-group trial, drug versus placebo, it just isn't enough anymore. To really figure out what's going on, they say you need a third group, a no-treatment group. That's the only way to separate the true placebo effect from the people who are just going to get better on their own anyway. And this just opens a whole Pandora's box of really tricky ethical questions. Like, should drug companies be allowed to genetically screen people out of trials if they're strong placebo responders? Could your doctor one day look at your genetic profile and say, okay, you're a high responder, so we're going to start you on a lower dose? And here's the real mind bender. If you find out you're a placebo responder, does knowing that actually break the spell? Ultimately, all of this leads to a pretty profound place. The placebo effect shows us that healing isn't just a simple case of a drug acting on a cell. It's this incredibly complex dance between our chemistry, our psychology, our genetics, and our environment. It really blurs the lines and makes us ask a much bigger question. If the power to heal is so tied up in our own minds and our own DNA, what does real medicine even mean?